Hank always craves devil's food cake. I said, well, gee, Hank, how do you do that? Well, I see an image of it right in front of me. It's always there, and I'm always craving. So he sits down and has a wonderful discussion with Rick Daigle about his business, but it's red devil's food cake is always there sort of in the background. And a lot of times, just knowing how people think allows me to guide them into taking a shift that can be pretty profound. So I said, Hank, how do you do it? You know, you got it right in front of you. Okay, so take that image and go 200 miles over the horizon, lock it in place. What about devil's food cake now? Well, I don't really want any, thank you. And I actually met him in a public place, and I walked off to talk to somebody else, and I saw Hank staring off into space. Beads of sweat literally dripping down his face, and I got a little curious. And I went over and said, what's going on, Hank? Well, I don't have any cravings for devil's food cake. I'm trying to get it back, but I can't. Of course, all he needs to do is unlock it, bring it in from 200 miles, and put it right in front of his face again. And that's a level of control. Now, this 7 minutes is about being in control and how I, as a hypnotherapist, relate to my client's ability to be in control. And when I mentioned cousin Maisie, who is a type A personality, it bothers her that she can't really control her food cravings. She can't really control her dress size, particularly during the holidays. My job is to help her be able to have some conscious way of asserting that control that doesn't require constant willpower and constant effort. The effort comes in during the time that I'm spending with her in the session as I guide her through some specific ways to assert that control and make that just as automatic as her previous cravings. Okay, so simple things like Hank is just mechanical. Take the image, put it off in the distance, lock it in place. Sometimes for chocolate cravings, what I've had the person do is determine, what is it that's really compelling about it? Well, it might be that simply changing the texture in their mental representation of chocolate from smooth candy to the texture of a baked potato still tastes good. And what happens is that the compulsion really evaporates, and it's like, chocolate's okay, but I can take it or leave it. And for some people, that's enough. And then there are people who have a strong emotional attachment to a particular food like chocolate, and it's associated with things like being special when they were a little child, being mischievous, the forbidden fruit. Well, that's a different level of satisfaction from the eating of the food. It's not just simply the taste, and it feels good when I eat the chocolate. It gives me a little boost of those serotonins and other good brain chemicals. And typically people will relate to a conflict model. The angel on one shoulder, the devil on the other shoulder, and I'll do a bit of negotiation. Quite frankly, the hardest part for most people is recognizing that the devil has a positive intention for them. It might be simply pleasure or being able to assert themselves, and they may be out of date. They may be, I'm going to eat that chocolate even though I'm not supposed to, from the emotional stance of a small child who's told what they can do and what they can't do. They're ordered around a lot, and so sneaking the chocolate is a way of asserting themselves. Well, now that they're 47, this person probably can update their strategies for being able to assert that control. Everybody doesn't relate to the conflict model, even if they have a conflict. And so what I may do is talk to them about what's most important to them. So the person who says instant gratification, okay, and then later they'll regret because their bottom line is expanding and their waistline is expanding and they feel like they're out of control. an example of somebody who I worked with who was a smoker told me that health was her most important consideration. That was most important to her in her life. And I said, well, when you chose to smoke a cigarette, what was most important then? Oh, cigarettes. Well, it turns out she organized her values hierarchy in space. This was most important, this was less important. And so what I did was I said, at that moment when you chose to smoke, that was the most important. Between times, health was most important. So I said, okay, I want you to think about, in your imagination, go to one of those times when you were deciding to smoke, and I grabbed this one, and I grabbed health and locked it in place. And I said, are you going to smoke again? And she goes, uh-uh. And it took me 20 minutes to convince her conscious mind she was done. All right? So some things that you and your friends can do, you can recommend to them to gain control over eating is something as simple as eating in a way that makes us conscious of the process. Eat with your non-dominant hand. If you're right-handed, eat left-handed for a meal or two. That brings the behaviors into conscious awareness. Another thing, turn off the TV. If you normally sit down to eat, stand up. If you normally eat standing up in your kitchen, walk outside and sit down, weather permitting, and eat your meal there. Eat with chopsticks. And you can eat a bowl of chili with chopsticks. Basically, you're holding the bowl up and drinking and shoveling in, but it's something that's going to bring about a different conscious awareness and process at which gives the person more control. And it's also giving the unconscious mind the message, hey, we're changing something here. I'm Wesley Anderson, Doctor of Clinical Hypnotherapy.